Hey there. You're listening to True Story No Cap. Real stories, no exaggeration, no lies. Just the raw, unfiltered moments life throws our way. Relax, lean back, and let's get started. Sarah carefully arranged the golden brown cinnamon buns on the tray. At first, the thought of wrapping each one in a separate bag crossed her mind, but she immediately dismissed it. They'd be gone in minutes anyway, and in cellophane they'd lose their appetizing look. Better they lie there, pleasing to the eye. Brought her own buns from the supermarket, did she? A sarcastic voice said behind her, and Sarah involuntarily flinched in surprise. My God, Brenda, why do you sneak up like that, as if you're trying to scare me on purpose? Brenda, her coworker, merely smirked. And how else? What if you're doing something you shouldn't? Then I'll have dirt on you right away. I can use it if I need to. Sarah frowned. You're such an idiot, Brenda. Brenda put a hand on her shoulder. Oh, come on, I'm just kidding. Kidding. Just blurted it out. And I'm not sneaking up at all. I always walk quietly. Don't you know that? Sarah remained silent. She knew Brenda perfectly well. You could expect anything from that woman. Sarah had often noticed her cheating customers, sometimes rigging the scales, sometimes shortchanging them, and sometimes even leaving out items from the bag. She was cunning, shifty, and knew exactly who she could play dirty tricks on. She had an incredible intuition. She could sense from a mile away who could be swindled and who was best left alone. Of course, Sarah never told anyone what she saw, not even Mr. Peterson, the owner of the store. It wasn't her rule to report or tattle, but Brenda loved that sort of thing. Because of her, one of the salesgirls had been fired 6 months ago. Brenda had set the girl up, telling Mr. Peterson all sorts of nasty things. That's why Sarah was sure, if Brenda found even the slightest thing that could cast a shadow on Sarah's reputation, she would definitely use it. But Sarah had nothing to reproach herself for. She was completely honest, never took anything on the sly, never carried products home. With customers, she was always open and decent, and she had a good relationship with the owner, Mr. Peterson. From the very first day she came to work for him, he had treated her with a special warmth. Sarah felt that he had almost fatherly feelings for her. He saw a daughter in her. That's why he even allowed her to sell her own buns, so she could earn a little extra. Apparently, it was because of this that Brenda held a grudge against her, trying to find a way to blacken her name in the owner's eyes. However, she couldn't simply slander her, because Mr. Peterson was too fond of Sarah to take someone's word for it. She needed irrefutable proof. You're quiet today. I've asked you something several times already, and you're silent. Brenda broke the silence. Huh? Did you ask something? Sarah snapped back to attention. I said you look washed out today. Didn't get enough sleep, probably? Did a gentleman keep you up? Brenda asked with a smile. Sarah frowned and replied with annoyance. What gentleman? Brenda, you're starting to get on my nerves. I don't have anyone. You know I don't have time for romances. Brenda adjusted her hair, looked at herself in a small mirror, touched up her lipstick, and snapped the case shut. Her voice became insistent. And it's a shame you don't have a man. How many years has it been since your husband left you? 5 years, probably? It's been 6 years, Sarah corrected gloomily. How can you go 6 years without a man, Sarah? You should have had 100 by now, and you're still sitting alone, suffering. It would be different if you had a husband. Look at me. I had a wild night with my husband today. I'm glowing and radiant. And look at yourself in the mirror. You look like a ghost, just dark circles under your eyes. Only if you hadn't slept because of a man, you'd look different. And your empty bed will soon turn you into a dried-up skeleton. Brenda, are you out of your mind? What men? My daughter is sick, that's why I didn't sleep. I sat by her bed all night. She's coughing badly again, nothing helps. And you with your love affairs. I'm glad everything is good for you, but it doesn't concern me. Brenda turned away from Sarah, offended, and busied herself with her own work. She was trying to make her coworker envious, wanting to show her superiority in her personal life, and just sting Sarah a little harder. She was angry that her words had no effect on Sarah. And Sarah thought about how good it would be if all the buns were sold today. She would take her earnings and go to the pharmacy to buy medicine for Alice. Several hours of the shift passed. Almost all the buns were sold, only a couple were left. Brenda looked enviously at the happy Sarah. The cinnamon buns had become a real hit. People really liked them. Several regular customers kept asking which days these buns were delivered. They were so good, people wanted to buy them again and again. Sarah blushed with pleasure. With Mr. Peterson's permission, she brought her buns 3 times a week. They were sold out before closing time. Finally, there were no buns left. Sarah counted the money earned from the till, made a note in the thick ledger lying under the counter, and put the earnings in her pocket. "What are you doing here? All right, empty your pockets, hands on the counter." Sarah flinched and then laughed with relief. "Mr. Peterson, you scared me too." The store owner shook his head with sympathy. "Sarah, dear, you've been so jumpy lately and you look very worn out. Has something happened?" "No, nothing special. Everything's as usual. Alice is coughing badly again. I don't know what to do. Here, I've taken the money for the buns. I'll go to the pharmacy and at least buy some medicine. I hope she feels better right away." Mr. Peterson looked closely at the woman's tired face. He felt very sorry for her. No one cared for her. She only cared for everyone else. She had to carry such a burden that her shoulders could barely bear the weight, but she stubbornly refused any help that the kind Mr. Peterson offered her. She didn't want to be indebted to anyone, although he genuinely wanted to help, without any obligations. And it was all because of her cursed ex-husband. He kept drilling into her when she was on maternity leave that she owed him everything. She had to sit with the child in silence, had to manage the entire household and do the shopping herself, had to strain herself with heavy bags, had to endure humiliation, had to be capable and patiently wait for him from his night outs with who knows whom and where, and then, of course, had to serve him when he was drunk. She had to erase herself as a person, and most importantly, forget about her female essence. He had turned her into a frightened creature who was afraid to say a word. Mr. Peterson was sure that all this had also affected her daughter's health, which is why the child was so fragile and often sick. "Of course, Sarah, dear. I'll let you leave an hour early today. You'll have time to go to the pharmacy and at least sit with your daughter. Brenda will cover for you." Sarah smiled gratefully and thanked the owner. Brenda heard this conversation. When Mr. Peterson left, she immediately approached Sarah. Well, you'll stop working altogether soon. The boss will just pay you money because you're batting your eyelashes at him." "Brenda, you're talking nonsense again. What kind of wild fantasies are those? He's just kind to me, that's all. I'm grateful to him for that. He restored my belief that the world isn't without good people." But Brenda narrowed her eyes and snorted contemptuously. "Oh yes, definitely not without good people. Only behind that kindness lies a completely different interest. He clearly has designs on something more than your gratitude. Hasn't he hinted at gratitude yet? Well, it's just a matter of time. Soon the transparent hints will start, you'll see. I know about these things. I've had hundreds of such situations. As soon as a man does something for a woman, demands for gratitude immediately follow. I don't think I need to explain what kind of gratitude we're talking about. Intimacy, Sarah, intimacy. These things are always a priority for men. Let me give you some advice. Don't miss the chance when he offers to get close. Be affectionate, show attention, show him sympathy, give him signs of attention, and the road to happiness will open up. Who knows? Maybe you'll even quit your job. He'll become your support. He'll even raise your child." Sarah choked with indignation. She flushed, imagining what Brenda was talking about. Sarah looked around anxiously, afraid they might be overheard, and then breathed out in a whisper, "What are you talking about, Brenda? You've definitely lost your mind. Mr. Peterson would never do such a thing. He's married and he's like a father to me. You can't understand that. I don't want to talk about this anymore. If you mention it again, I'll stop all communication with you." Brenda snorted contemptuously and moved away, and Sarah couldn't calm down for a long time. Could what her coworker said really be true? Sarah felt sick when she imagined that Mr. Peterson might have designs on her, not because he was unattractive or unpleasant, but because for her he was a mentor, a protector, almost a relative, but by no means a potential lover. Sarah left work an hour early. As she walked to the pharmacy, she thought about her ex-husband. Because of him, she hadn't waited for David to return from the army. Mark had enchanted her in a matter of hours. They met at a party and were inseparable from then on. They rushed into marriage 2 months later. Sarah still suffered from guilt that she hadn't even found the strength to tell David about her wedding in person. She just wrote him a letter and then left with her husband for another city. Only, married life turned out to be far from ideal. The first 5 years were normal, they were happy together. After she got pregnant, which happened 5 years later, Mark changed, as if her condition caused him disgust. He constantly tormented her, became distant, no longer offered support. During her difficult pregnancy, she suffered from debilitating toxemia, but Mark remained indifferent to his wife's suffering. After the child was born, the situation worsened. He had dreamed of a son, but a daughter was born, and he constantly reproached Sarah, blamed her for everything. While Sarah was on maternity leave, he blamed her for everything and never took on any responsibilities. And on weekends, he disappeared with friends until morning. Sarah suspected infidelity, but was afraid to even hint at it. Sarah returned from maternity leave but couldn't work. Alice was constantly sick, and the woman was eventually forced to quit. Her husband's torment became unbearable, and 6 months later, he kicked her out. More precisely, he pointed her to the door. The apartment was his. "I don't need you anymore, and I don't need your sick daughter. Get out to your mother's. You have nothing more to do here. I've filed for divorce, and I'm going to remarry. I've found a girl who is the complete opposite of you. She's bright and cheerful, and you're like a squeezed rag." Sarah and her daughter traveled back to her hometown. These family relationships left a deep mark on her life. She was no longer the carefree, cheerful girl she used to be. Now she was a worn-out, depressed, nervous woman who was straining herself to give her daughter everything she needed. It was a great salvation that they lived with her mother. They didn't have to pay for housing. They simply wouldn't have survived otherwise. Sarah emerged from her dark memories when she reached the pharmacy door. She bought the necessary medications and went home. The next day, Sarah came to work, and unexpected news awaited them. Mr. Peterson was going to Moscow with his wife. She had health problems, and he was handing over the business to his son-in-law in his place. "He has a daughter? I had no idea. Why did he never mention it?" Sarah whispered to Brenda. "Well, I'll be. I thought you knew. She's been gone for a long time. She was barely 25. Cancer, I think, some brain problems. They said she suffered terribly, writhing in unbearable pain. Horrible. And the son-in-law didn't leave her side until the end, although there were rumors that the marriage was one of convenience, like his heart belonged to someone else. But she left him. But those are all rumors. I don't know what's true." However, after his daughter passed away, Mr. Peterson remained on good terms with his son-in-law, and now he'll be filling in for the owner. It will be interesting to see him, what kind of bird he is, and what to expect from him. Maybe he'll let me sell my own things too? And Brenda chuckled maliciously. The next day, Mr. Peterson brought his son-in-law to introduce him to the business. When he headed towards the employees to introduce his son-in-law, Sarah felt the ground give way beneath her feet, as if she had been thrown into the air and suddenly dropped. Her breath caught for a moment, and her heart hammered wildly, ready to burst out. Standing before them was David. It was her former fiancé whom she hadn't waited for from the army. It was him in person. Strangely, he had barely changed. But Sarah had transformed. After all, he didn't even recognize her. When he looked at her, his indifferent gaze revealed nothing. He gave a polite smile, making it clear that working with him would be easy, provided discipline was maintained and there was no insolence. But his gaze didn't even linger on her. Mr. Peterson went to tell David how things were, and Sarah worked all day flinching at every rustle of his voice, mistaking it for the voice of a customer or Brenda. Then Mr. Peterson and David left. Sarah felt heavy-hearted, and she also felt awkward. Now she would have to see him every day. What if he did recognize her? Or, conversely, what if he remained a stranger and interacted with her formally, like with other employees? Sarah couldn't even choose which was worse. But the uncertainty was resolved that same evening. Her coworker left early, and Sarah stayed to wait for the security guard. He was running late today. Closing time was approaching. Sarah had already picked up the keys when the door slammed shut. "The store is closed. Sorry," Sarah called out and came out from behind the counter. And then she froze in indecision, not knowing how to act. Standing before her was David. He was looking at her intently, and it was impossible to read from his gaze what was going on in his soul. But then he said, "Hello, Sarah." "Hello again." "You recognized me? I thought I had changed completely, beyond recognition." David shook his head. "No, that's not true." A pause fell. Sarah didn't know what to say, and then she realized it was now or never. "Forgive me, David. Forgive me for what I did back then. Know that I paid for it in full and I'm still paying? You know, we were young, and I realized that over time. At first, I felt anger and even hatred towards you, but then I understood that I was too demanding. I think that pushed you away. I should have just loved, but I only demanded. You met a person who loved you unconditionally, who gave, not demanded, and I made a mistake. Sarah lowered her eyes. He turned out to be a monster. He broke me. I thought I deserved it. I had no right to treat you like that. I got what I deserved, she whispered. David wanted to say something but didn't have time. Sarah's phone rang. She answered. It was her mother calling. Yes? What? I'm coming. I'll be there soon. Sarah's voice broke into a sob. What happened? David gripped Sarah by the shoulders. My daughter, Alice, she's choking. I need to get home right away. David locked the store. He drove Sarah home instantly in his car. Alice was having a terrible coughing fit. She started to choke. She couldn't breathe. David took them both to the hospital. He went in with them and spoke decisively to the doctors. Everything happened very quickly. Alice received emergency care. The threat passed. When the doctor came out and said that the girl would be kept in the hospital for a day, but there was no need to worry anymore, Sarah cried. David hugged her and said everything will be all right. It turned out Alice had an acute allergic reaction. Sarah thought she was just treating a cough, but it turned out it wasn't a cough, but a severe allergy. David didn't abandon them in their trouble. A few days later, he brought in a specialist from another city. The specialist examined Alice thoroughly and prescribed a full examination. David paid for all the expenses. He sent all the test results to the doctor, who provided a treatment plan. And for the first time in several years, the cough subsided. Yes, the treatment turned out to be long and expensive. Perhaps she would have to take medications for life. Although the doctor said there was a chance it would pass over time, such an outcome was possible. The main thing was that the cause of her daughter's suffering had been identified. Sarah was happy. Alice had noticeably transformed. She stopped getting sick so often for no reason, became a cheerful, active, healthy child, and all this was thanks to David. 2 months passed. Their communication was infrequent, mainly related to caring for Alice. When the girl recovered, the calls stopped. And then Mr. Peterson returned with his wife. She had been successfully treated, long-term rehabilitation was needed, but that was all minor now. The owner was back in the store, and David seemed to have disappeared. Sarah felt a longing in her heart. Her heart ached. She realized that she felt not just gratitude towards David, but something much deeper. And then, 2 weeks after Mr. Peterson's return, David appeared at her home. It was a day off. He came with a bouquet, a box of expensive chocolates, and a whole bag of sweets for Alice. The girl took the bag to her room. Sarah's mother withdrew to the living room, giving them privacy. And David confessed that he could no longer hide his feelings. He had continued to love Sarah all these years and had never stopped loving her. He had married Mr. Peterson's daughter in an attempt to forget Sarah, but it hadn't helped. And now his feelings had flared up with new strength and gave him no peace. He realized that if he didn't open up to Sarah, he would never forgive himself. My feelings for you have only grown stronger than in our youth. I don't want to hide them anymore. Sarah simply hugged David without a word. 6 months passed. David and Sarah got married, and the man took Sarah and Alice to live with him. Sarah left her job at the store. She stopped working altogether. David was a wealthy man, and he didn't want his wife to overwork herself. Sarah dedicated herself to her home, caring for her daughter and husband and herself. Mr. Peterson was sincerely happy for them. He saw Sarah as almost a daughter and David as a son. They were on warm terms with him. Sarah had transformed. She no longer felt unattractive. The signs of fatigue and exhaustion disappeared. She blossomed. David's love brought her back to life, and she found happiness that everything had turned out this way. Perhaps to reach true happiness, they had to go through trials and mistakes. Only after that did they realize the true value of love.